This tape demonstrates the different types of communication that you can use in your work and shows examples of communication skills used in home care settings. These examples include clear communication and good listening skills, the 5 essential components, the 5 C's of communication, and 4 key therapeutic communication skill areas. Examples of inappropriate communication are also shown. The use of touch in communication is demonstrated. This section of the tape concludes with a summary of the communication skills that have been demonstrated. The second section of the tape reviews documentation skills, details a care plan, and describes how to use it. Examples of recording and reporting your observations about clients and their families, including incident reports, are given.
I'm Ellen, a home care aide for an agency in this urban community. For our clients and the different healthcare professionals who work as a team to serve them, the most important skill we use is clear, effective communication. Open, honest, continuing communication between the healthcare professionals, families, and our clients is vital. Equally important is clear, correct, concise communication between each member of the team of caregivers. Information that is clearly given and clearly understood is the basis for satisfactory relationships with our employers, our clients and their families, and with each other. Communication involves not only words, but gestures and other body movements, facial expression, eye contact, touch, and the tone in which we speak, and our attitude. We're going to look at common home care situations, show examples of good and bad communication, and give feedback about each one.
This is a picture of Bill and me and our son Tony the year before he died. It was the first real vacation away from home we'd had as a family. As it turns out, it was also the last.
Tony looks very handsome. He's got your eyes. I'd like to hear about him.
I don't want to talk about him. You know, I used to think I was strong and hard as nails. Then Tony died. A couple of years later, these leg muscles became weak. I lost some of my vision. This terror called MS took over my body and my life. I try to believe I'm going to conquer it. But I'm scared. These spasms in my bladder are agonizing. I can't control my urine. I sure can't control my life. When I say goodbye to you each afternoon, I wonder what that really means.
It sounds like you're feeling very frightened and out of control of your life. I can understand that. But I don't understand what you were saying about not knowing what it means after you say goodbye to me each day.
I keep wishing that more people would come and visit with me, but when they do, they're as stiff as these joints of mine. They look at me as if there was no tomorrow, and they don't know what to say. My bladder hurts again. Is it time for my pain pills?
It's only been an hour since your last dose. I'll get you some of that cranberry juice, though. That always helps you a lot.
I'm Sheila Roberts, Mrs. Jameson's case manager. In that interaction, Ellen showed excellent listening skills, one of the most important components of communication. She focused on what Mrs. Jameson was saying. She did not back away physically or emotionally, as Mrs. Jameson shared some powerful feelings. She showed Mrs. Jameson that she was concerned and was willing to listen further. She remained courteous. She used a gentle touch to reinforce and express non-verbally her caring for Mrs. Jameson as a person. And when Mrs. Jameson changed the subject at the end of the conversation and exerted control over Ellen by asking her to get her pain medication, Ellen accepted Mrs. Jameson's wishes without being judgmental. Ellen was so concerned about Mrs. Jameson that she stopped in the office on her way home to see me.
Thanks for seeing me. I'm glad you were free. And I'll only take a few minutes. I'm extremely concerned about Mrs. Jameson. Physically, there's little change. Her bladder spasms still trouble her, but she's still very self-sufficient in all of her activities. The assistive devices you got for her for eating have helped a lot. In the past few days, since you saw her last, she's become very depressed. She's expressed fear about the future, anger at her lack of control, and today, she told me that she didn't know what it meant when she said goodbye to me each day. I'm worried that she's thinking about suicide. Her husband doesn't get home till late. He's doing overtime to pay the bills. She's got many kinds of pills in her medicine cupboard and a lot of time on her hands.
Ellen was quite right to tell me about this, and I will certainly follow through. I'll visit with Mrs. Jameson this evening and then talk to her doctor. In that conversation, as she expressed her concerns to me, Ellen showed 5 essential components of communication. Her message was complete. She described Mrs. Jameson's physical and mental status and gave an example of Mrs. Jameson's communication that concerned her. Her message was clear. I understood what she was saying to me, and her choice of words was good. Her message was concise. She did not include any unnecessary information. The message was cohesive. It was well thought out, logical, and in order. And finally, it was courteous, of my time constraints, and courteous in her caring for Mrs. Jameson. She also repeated some things Mrs. Jameson said to make sure she had received the message accurately.
In summary, the 5 C's of communication are: be complete, clear, concise, cohesive, and courteous.
It turned out that there were real reasons for concern about Mrs. Jameson. Now her doctor is treating her depression. She is in a support group, and her church is sending volunteers to visit with her in the evenings when her husband's away. Let's look at other interactions. First, to set the scene between Carlos, one of our home care aides, and John Scott, who is ill with AIDS.
It was incredible. It was a good experience.
It's amazing anything gets done between the two of them. I mean, I've heard horror stories about, them actually throwing things at each other, stuff like that.
Is my shirt wrinkled?
And now, between Carlos and the client's mother, Mrs. Rachel Scott.
Okay. Now, this is a banana, a cup of orange juice, a few graham crackers, and a touch of nutmeg going into the blender to make a smoothie. Now, John will enjoy this, and it will give him about 250 calories.
You truly care for him, don't you? It's just you and me now. His friends have gradually stopped visiting. I suppose they see themselves. Bob, my husband, has never understood why. Now he blames my genes, and he stays away from both of us. I've never been able to get him to talk about John. And he resents the cost of all this. I had such dreams for John. Now all those dreams are regrets. And some nightmares.
Without dreams, life would be intolerable. I'm sure John still has his dreams. I know I hold on to mine even tighter when I'm frightened of losing them. Look, I'm going to be here for a couple of hours. That's an opportunity for you to get out for a while. I'll finish making the smoothie for John.
Many of our communications with clients should be therapeutic. They should help that client feel better in some way. Unlike a doctor, home care aides cannot prescribe 'But that does not stop you from showing and giving care and compassion. In any therapeutic communication or interaction with our clients, we each bring 4 sets of behaviors into use. Carlos showed these with Mrs. Scott. First, he showed his professionalism, which he expressed by maintaining his own self-esteem and self-confidence, and by being well-groomed, even at the kitchen sink. Second, he employed his vocal skills, expressing sympathetic emotions and tone. Third, he showed good nonverbal communication, eye contact, his nearness to Mrs. Scott, and his facial and body gestures. Finally, he showed good language or verbal skills and chose good words to use.
In summary, 4 key therapeutic communication skill areas are professionalism, vocal skills, nonverbal communication skills, language skills.
In any face-to-face interaction, the impact we make is 70% nonverbal, gestures, eyes, body language, 20% vocal, the tone, pace, emotions in our voice, and only 10% verbal from the words we use. Let's follow Carlos and see what happened to the smoothie.
Hi, John. I brought you something. This smoothie has banana, orange juice, nutmeg, and graham crackers, all blended together. I've chilled it. It should make your mouth feel less dry and sticky. There we go.
That's good. It's cool. Just like a popsicle when I was a kid. It's such an effort to drink, and my taste buds are getting shot. I don't know why they call it human immunodeficiency syndrome. It's the most inhuman monster ever to land on this planet. My face is a mess thanks to Dr. Carposi and his sarcoma. My friends, when they look at me, I can see they think about their future and gradually they abandon me. My father, when he sees me at all, he looks at me with disgust. There's so much important business to finish and he won't talk. Banana smoothie releases this incredible torrent of self-pity. If you peel a banana, you get to the good part. When you peel most humans, they are rotten.
I'll have to make more of these. They help you to let go of what's bothering you. Listen. Before I go today, I want to give you a bed bath. Now, would you like that now? Or would you like to rest for half an hour?
Probably the most therapeutic and necessary communication skill for a home care aide is that of listening effectively. Many times our clients are not expecting us to do or to change anything. The fact that someone will listen to them and show understanding and caring is very therapeutic in itself. Carlos listened well and acknowledged John's feelings and emotions. He was clearly empathetic, putting himself emotionally in John's shoes. He avoided cliches like, keep your chin up, and he made no false reassurances like, I'm sure your friends will come back. And at the end, Carlos introduced his own needs to complete his assignment of the bed bath in a way that also directed John's attention away from his internal difficulties to something that would make him feel better. Let's look at an interaction with a client with Alzheimer's syndrome that is clearly wrong and should never happen under any circumstances.
here. I fixed you a perfectly good lunch, and you promised me you'd eat it. You've been following me around this house all morning, asking me inane questions, trying to hold my hand. You turned the heat up on the beans when I wasn't looking and they got burned. Now you come rolling in here. I'm trying to take a break for 5 minutes. You come rolling in looking like the morning after. I mean, isn't there any place I can go to get a little peace and quiet?
It's so nice having someone in the house once again. Lawrence and I used to do the housework, all of it together. You look like she did when we got married.
All right. You can tell me about Florence. I'll stay with you while you eat, and you can take a nap while I'm washing the dishes. Come on.
So many things were wrong. No matter how hard the day, how difficult the client, a home care aide is a professional caregiver. The aide cannot reflect frustration or anger onto the client. She has accepted the responsibility of the job to give care to a person in need. She has accepted a contract to treat that person with the dignity and caring that any human being deserves. In addition, if Mr. Simpson is turning up the burners when her back is turned for a moment, then the whole house must be made safe. Perhaps Mr. Simpson is no longer able to be on his own, even though Ellen is there by day and his daughter spends every evening and night with him. Ellen must notify her supervisor or case manager about her difficulties. Mr. Simpson, directly or indirectly, is paying for Ellen's services, and she has a direct responsibility to him to communicate with him in a courteous, responsible, and gentle manner, and to notify her supervisor when this is becoming difficult. If a particular assignment is too frustrating, then Ellen has the right to ask to be relieved of that assignment. Let's look at another interaction.
I had to go to the emergency room last night with chest pain. My daughter had driven me to her house to see my granddaughter, and we had such a good time. We laughed all night. And then, oh, that pain in my chest came on. And it wouldn't go away, even with those pills I put under my tongue. So my daughter took me to the emergency room, and they did the usual tests, and the pain went away. And so my daughter brought me home. I guess the only excitement in my life these days is going to emergency.
Are you having any chest pain this morning?
No. But you know, it's tough when you can't go out for an evening with your family without ending up in the hospital.
Well, I'm glad your chest pain has gone today. How else are you feeling?
I'm all right, I guess. Well, the days are longer and drearier since Bill died. The soaps are all the same. The house gets emptier and emptier, colder and colder.
You miss Bill a lot. Now he's gone. How are you coping?
Well, Social Security pays for the rent and the heat, and Medicare pays for you. And on days when you're not here, I have Meals on Wheels. But the evenings are the worst. That's when I wish I were with Bill.
Sounds like you're finding the loneliness more and more difficult. I'll talk to Sheila, the case manager, about this.
Audrey showed good listening and nonverbal skills. She focused on what Mrs. Johnson was saying. Her eye contact and facial movements gave the clear message that she was really interested in how Mrs. Johnson felt. Too little eye contact tells a client that you don't care. As you could see, the use of touch is very sensitive and powerful at the same time. Touch should show understanding, caring, and acceptance. It should never be possessive or invasive. At the end, she asked the right questions that allowed Mrs. Johnson's depression to come out loud and clear. In summary, listen well. Hear what your client is saying. Try and put yourself in the client's shoes. Communicate clearly, completely, concisely, courteously, cohesively, with caring, and, most importantly, with honesty.
The care plan lists the client's needs and the services that are to be provided to address these physical, functional, psychological, and social needs. The registered nurse responsible for the supervision and delegation of the client's care develops the plan jointly with the client, and it is reviewed by the home care team. The nurse regularly evaluates the appropriateness of the plan in meeting the client's changing needs. Changes to the care plan are discussed with the client's physician, the client, the aide, and other members of the team providing care. Each client has a care plan that is kept in their home. Each agency has its own form for the aide's care plan, and we are showing one example. The first section gives the client's demographic information, the emergency contact, and the client's physician. It then details the client's condition, including sensory defects, the client's ability to communicate, special factors to be considered, and the care being provided by others in the household. The section on general care details toileting and skin care. The medication section specifies how the aide will help the client take the prescribed medication and whether the aide needs to obtain it from the pharmacy. The rehabilitation section lists the client's needs for assistance transfer, ambulation, escort, and help with dressing and undressing. The sections on cleaning and shopping list home care duties to be performed and their frequency. These sections detail the client's diet, supplies to be obtained, and how laundry is to be done. The final sections list care, such as vital signs and weighing, the hours that the aide is to be in the client's home, and the start date. It is signed by the registered nurse. The care plan is compatible with the worksheet or activity sheet or service report that the aide fills in each day, usually with an attached time slip. This service report or worksheet lists the personal care activities the aide performs each day of the week, together with the home care tasks performed. The report is signed each day by the aide and the client. On the back of the worksheet, documentation of care can be recorded and signed. An incident is an unusual or unexpected event or occurrence that does not fit into the normal routine of client care. All incidents should be reported by phone to your designated supervisor. Your agency will also require you to fill out a paper report. Each agency will have its own form. Items include the client's name, address, and phone number, information about yourself, including the date you started this case to show how familiar you are with the client, information about the date, time, location of the incident, and details of any witnesses, who was notified at what date and time, and if the client received medical care and how he or she was transported there. Many forms have a checklist of the more common types of incidents. Falls with or without injury occurring in or out of service hours. Infections related to services provided or not. Incidents related to medication that was not taken in excess, or produced an adverse drug reaction. Equipment failure or unavailability, or if the client was abusive. An unexpected death, IV-related incidents, or a client injury other than a fall. client care that was omitted or given outside the care plan, alleged client abuse, property damage, or theft or an employee injury. Other types of incidents, which could include family feuds or violence, drug use, or an unsafe environment. You are asked to describe completely the incident and specify any injury. This particular form would be completed by your supervisor, who details the follow-up that was done and the final outcome of the incident. The form must be signed by you and your supervisors. An incident report is not part of the client's medical record, but it is a legal document and must be legible and complete. It is reviewed with your supervisor, who will place it in the appropriate agency file.